Welcome, everybody, to the Mining Book Morning. Joining us today is John Florek, the CEO of Emperor Metals. John, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, good to see you again there, Jeremy.
Yeah, John, right off the bat, I'm looking at your resume here, and it's impressive. I mean, you spent a decade at BHP. You move in with Placer Dome, which is bought out by Barrick. You end up in the Barrick ecosystem. You're part of an award-winning team in 2008 that extends the mine life at the Williams mine and the Hemlo camp. Uh, you end up at Detour Gold, which is absorbed into Kirkland Lake. From my understanding, it's at Kirkland Lake, which is where your experience in machine learning and AI start coming into place. And now you're filling the hot seat of CEO with Emperor. So incredible resume, long history. So well done, first of all, on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I kind of want to talk. I love to play historian a little bit and just kind of jump in before we talk about Emperor and some of the other more modern updates. You know, having worked with the majors and now kind of and in a more geology based role, how has that transition been getting into the CEO role with the junior and kind of your last year transitioning here? How has that been?
Well, it's been pretty easy and smooth because it's a long trajectory. I didn't just jump into CEO role. It's been developed over a course of a lifetime. I have 30 plus years in geology. And as you mentioned, I worked for a lot of the different major companies out there. I would say that the first half of my career, first 15 to 20 years was exploration, and subsequent the last 10 to 15 years has been in production. So I got a vision of exactly how to find and develop a deposit. And some of the production stuff that I've done most recently with Detour Lake Gold was important because I use this novel approach or the new technology of artificial intelligence. That's where I was introduced to it. And so I'm basically using that to build a new company. This junior basically was birthed in artificial intelligence. We evaluated using these techniques, we acquired, and now we're implemented our exploration program using this.
And I love that in an industry that I think has historically not been that receptive to new technology. I think a paradigm shift is coming, so it's exciting to see. And so I want to hear one quick story though. You were when Placer Dome was bought out by Barrick and you went into the Hemlo area. In 2008, you were part of a team that won an award for extending the mine life there at a time when Golden Giant had already closed. The David Bell mine would close shortly after. So can you just for the House Street junkies that love the history, kind of tell us a little bit about that experience, what it was like being a part of that team, expanding the mine life of a legendary mining camp at Hemlo, which has history as old as House Street intertwined with it.
Yeah, it was great. I had great people to work with. I came down to work at Hemlo, just coming from Red Lake, and the mine was supposed to close in 2012. So we were dealing with a different beast back then because the main part of the deposit was being exhausted. It was placement style ore. And now we were seeing these to the west, these high grade quartz veins with a lot of visible gold in it, carrying ounces on. And so we were trying to build upon that. And basically we installed a grade control program, very similar to what we did up at Detour Lake. So I took some of that knowledge from Hemlo and brought it to Detour Lake Gold, an open pit environment instead of an underground environment. And this grade control model really helped illuminate the structures and how the ore behaves in a different geological setting than what the mine was used to. And basically that helped redesign the mine. The engineers did a good job splitting the levels and stuff to accommodate this new style of mineralization. So it was truly a team effort to extend the life of mine, and I was privileged to be part of it with the geological component. And that is always the most risky, the geological component. And so I find that very challenging. And it's amazing. You take care of the geology will take care of the operation in the long run. So that's what we did at Hemlo. And that's what we did up at Detour Lake Gold. We had this huge program that took about 2 years to develop this new grade control model. And basically we published it, and the mine became a lot more profitable. And that's what happened subsequently, like Kirkland Lake Golden and Eco Eagle acquired the deposit because of that
Right.
increased profitability. So yeah, this the idea of taking what you have as known knowledge and actually looking at it from a different angle and using AI is very helpful because it does trillions of calculations a minute to create additional domains to do estimations and stuff like that. So a very time-saving technique, and it can really illuminate the path forward to improvement in mining.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you're mentioning, the geology being one of the most challenging components of this whole game. I think it's why it's so important to have CEOs like yourself who are, you know, well versed, like geology first, in the focus for bringing these things together. So, as you're mentioning, AI and has been getting used, obviously, like you're mentioning with Kirkland Lake. Now you're bringing it into Emperor, and I've really noticed in the mainstream media, there's a massive buzz around artificial intelligence, and we're seeing it. Obviously, what's making the headlines is things like OpenAI and large language models, and write this article and things like that. But there's some real world applications that are developing with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, can you just kind of like walk us through, I guess, a little bit of a 101 on what machine learning, what artificial intelligence has been doing specifically for mining and geology?
Yeah, so for geology, it's important to look at the whole database and construct it properly to feed into artificial intelligence. So you still need geologists because it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you're doing, you have to synthesize the database. So you really have to kind of understand how the algorithms work to create potential domains that you would be using for estimation and stuff like that. So that's how I've used it is, going through the database. There might be, 5 or 6 or 7 different companies log in. They end up classifying things differently. So the geologist still has to go in there. They have to synthesize these databases for the machine learning to actually recognize how it would want to construct things. So it's very important, but most importantly, from a geological perspective, you can create models within a week or a month, sophisticated models that would take years to produce the conventional way. So it's just really speeding things up. And not only that, once you get these models in place, you can change the parameters and tweak them, and you can have multiple models working simultaneously. Like, for instance, exploration, you might have 3 or 4 different models. You drill a hole, what model behaves the best, and then you would use that model for your exploration program or refine it. So you can, and overnight, you can basically crunch the numbers and develop new shapes using artificial intelligence based on geology. But these are shapes that they're basically geological domains that be used to estimate ore grade and stuff like that. So that's how I've been using it. And for the Duquesne West, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, and yeah, the concept I think you're talking about, of needing the geologist, is that human in the loop. Which, so everybody who's scared about AI taking their jobs, like, we still need to, like you said, garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as the data you're feeding it. So that component of it is still so crucial. And then you're continue on the Duquesne West.
Yeah, so for the Duquesne West Gold Project, what we have right now, this was a deposit that was has been ignored for 12 years. And if you looked at the data, it was just 2-dimensional data. The 43-101 report was everything was cross sections. There was a polygonal reserve on it. There was no 3D model whatsoever.
Right.
So before we picked it out, we did a proper evaluation. So we took the database, we plugged everything into AI, and within a month, we made a mineralized model. I was able to present that to the board of the directors and basically make a decision that this was a property to pursue. In addition, a couple of months later, we had a full geological model in place using AI. So that would take potentially years. You look at some projects, they have 300,000-400,000 meters worth of drilling, and they still don't have a geological model. We had one like within a couple of months after acquiring the project. Now we're drilling it, and it's pretty accurate. So we're pretty excited about that. Yes, there's little glitches like that because of extrapolations and stuff like that, but that's plugged back into the model and recreated so we could keep refining these models on the fly. Historically, refining a model would be a lot of energy and effort, but with AI, it's quick and it's done overnight.
And it's done overnight. And you were using the Duquesne West property when you were modeling with the Maptek competition, correct?
Yeah, so I actually entered after we put this model. I entered into a contest and I got third place, I guess. It
That's
was a
right. Yeah.
global challenge that Maptek was hosting. So I said, oh, well, I'll just put it in and see how it does. And so they recognized that the work that was done was significant and novel way of using AI. So I got third place.
Right on. So the way I'm kind of seeing this in the landscape right now is kind of like the scene out of Moneyball with Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt, where they stop, looking at baseball players with like, hey, he's got the skill, and they start looking at the actual numbers. And I feel like that's maybe what's happening in geology. So, for the investor that doesn't know how complicated putting these models together are, what would, like, in the older ways of doing things, you said it takes years to assemble a model. What were the steps towards getting that done, and then how much of a paradigm shift is this really for our industry?
Yeah, I mean, there are some improvements like with Leapfrog, but it's not as sophisticated of a like an artificial intelligence platform behind it as
Mm,
Maptek's domain MCF. So that's helping to speed things along. And so we have a little bit of an edge there because we can build these models quite quickly, like you said. But traditionally, you would have to grab all your data. You'd have to digitize everything by hand. It's still important to look at the geology. So when you build these models using AI, you cut everything in cross section. You make sure that it's behaving appropriately. If it's not, and you see something that doesn't make sense with the geology, you have to go back to the database or rethink your parameters that you input into the machine learning program. Now,
mhm.
it's also important to recognize that AI is a significant time saver, but it does create additional jobs because it doesn't take away from jobs like people think when they talk about AI. Because look at this property. Here we are, we're taking a deposit that was ignored, and potentially we could turn this into maybe an open pit or high grade underground mine, which would create significant jobs because we use AI to reevaluate historical plays.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And the way I'm explaining it to people is like it's a new tool in your tool belt. And it's like we're kind of shifting into power tools now. And like you said, it's going to create new opportunities for a ton of people. So
Yeah. And the key thing there, Jeremy, is that it's sophisticated, but it's very easy to use. So
mhm,
it's not like you have to be a rocket scientist because the programmers and stuff already figured all that stuff out.
yeah.
So as a geologist, it's just about getting things formatted the right way to enter into the machine learning. So it's not like people have to be rocket scientists to use this technology. In
Mm,
fact, there's an ease of using it, and it makes your life so much easier.
right. So let's take that and let's jump into the Duquesne West project. Obviously, in a tier one district, as you've mentioned. This isn't territory that you are unfamiliar with. You've done work in the area before. So I guess, can you just walk us through like what attracted you to this project? What attracted you to obviously your partners as well, Metals Group, who's involved with the project, and kind of how did that all come together?
Yeah, so I was working with my business partner, Alex Horsley,
Hmm.
and basically he ran across a group of properties in the region. We kind of went through them, and we came across this one. It just sort of stuck out because it was right along the Porcupine Duster Fault, and that is the plumbing system that carried all the gold into. It basically fertilized the greenstone belts in the area, in the district.
Hmm.
And so that was exciting because this property straddled that major plumbing system. So we dug deep into it, looking at it, and did the evaluation, like I suggested. Um, and the fact that we were in this tier one district with 200 million ounces was significant because we knew that, exploring on the margins of potentially this high grade gold deposit, which we see now quite clearly with AI,
Hmm.
you reduce your risk. In addition to that, there's a lot of infrastructure in place. We have 6 mines within a half an hour to 45 minutes away from the property. We have a highway going through it, power. So you can actually view this as a potential satellite deposit that we could basically, it'll be supplemental feed to the existing mills in the area. We wouldn't have to build a tail end stand, wouldn't have to build a mill. You can save a lot on CapEx expenditure when this goes into production. You have a healthy NPV, a good rate of return. So it's really exciting to actually be a junior like us, whose initial flagship property is in the heart of this huge, historical district, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's so many producing mines already in the region. You look at the map and it looks like chicken pox, to be honest. And with everything going on in the world right now, Canada is a pretty desirable place to be mining. So yeah, you've mentioned that this potentially could end up as mill feed for some of the other operations that are in the area. There's currently 700,000 ounces over on the property. I guess what are some of the need to do's to kind of get it up to a place where maybe some of these other companies are going to start sniffing around?
Yeah, we're growing the deposit through this first, like we're drilling right now.
Yeah.
We're on hole, I think 10, right, as we speak. We released partial results for holes 1 and 2. And with those results, like we're learning as we're drilling this property. So we only used one drill rig this summer just so we could make sure that we're drilling in the right spots and take our time to think this program through.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing, if you look at our press release, is they have some really high grade intercepts. That's why we picked up the property, and we wanted to grow ounces with the high grade gold underground type mining environment. But no one's ever done continuous sampling. So we're doing some continuous sampling. Like hole 2, we're seeing that we have some nice grades over significant lengths. Like the bottom of hole 2 in the porphyry system, we have 25 plus minutes. We're extending the hole now because it ended in mineralization. And that was 1.69. If you start thinking about open pit environments, that gets you excited, or low grade bulk tonnage. So when we picked this up, we envisioned in the moderate depth range, we would try to get this to 1 or 2 million ounces, but now with an open pit potential, we're thinking that, from a moderate depth range, we can have a nice open pit with a couple million ounces underground, but we know that this will go even deeper. All these deposits in this district are 3 or 4 times deeper than they are in the horizontal extent. So this, more significant, like 5 million ounces potential. So that's how we're viewing it. We have the 3 scenarios to add ounces now. Before it was just the 1. Now we have the high grade gold underground. We have the open pit potential, and we also have low grade bulk tonnage. And just to remind your investors, Agnico Eagle, they have an underground mine called Goldex. It's 3.3 million ounces of 1.62 grams per ton, and they're mining that profitable. So that is exciting too, because those 3 avenues of wealth creation will be important for this company.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those are 3 very good avenues to pursue. So for the investor, in terms of thinking about end game vision for the company, is it to continue developing this deposit and getting it to a place where you can really be then passing it off into the hands of some of the operators in the area?
Yeah, well, that's the plan. I mean, we're in a major. I mean, Agnico Eagle is one of the biggest players in the camp. They've said that they need mill feed. They're looking for mill feed. So Newmont's another big player. They have the Borden Lake Gold, and now Borden Lake is a mine that's a satellite mine. It's basically supplemental feed for the district, and they truck that for 2 hours plus one way. So we're a lot closer than Borden Lake, which is viewed as a satellite deposit to some of these mills in the region. So we're quite excited to be right in the heart of the region. So it really makes the ounces a lot more valuable than elsewhere. Like 2 or 3 grams per ton here is like double, like 6 grams per ton or 10 grams per ton elsewhere, because of the close proximity and the synergies we can realize, and the ability not to have to build all this infrastructure to put this thing into production.
That's the big one. Having highways, having power, having transportation systems that are already in there is really invaluable. So lastly, we'll close with obviously the investors, I think, this is a story that people should be paying attention to. There's so much going on here, and we didn't even get to touch on Metals Group. Maybe we'll do another interview to catch up on them and their experience and that whole side of the team. They're another, just great pillar of the story as well. But to close with kind of a personal remark, what's getting you excited over the next 12 to 18 months? What are you optimistic about? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I think what I'm really excited about is continuing with this program and really looking at that open pit potential. We're at the core library, and there's so much unassayed core. It's like 50 to 7%, 70% of the core has not been assayed and it's mineralized. People only spot sampled the high grade gold in the past. Like, this deposit was discovered in the 40s. And so companies came in and they drilled it, and they were only looking for high grade gold because nobody really thought about open pit back then in the Superior Province. Only recently, like companies or deposits such as Detour Lake Gold and Malartic, are people starting to recognize, oh my God, open pit potential. And there's several open pits exact along trend where we are. But we're seeing all this core that hasn't been assayed. And if you were in an open pit environment, you would want to assay it, because you're going to have some nice long lengths of continuous mineralization that we're seeing, like we've seen in hole 2. So we're quite excited to be testing that open pit and building ounces that way, in addition to this high grade underground option that we initially introduced to the investors.
Well, it's an exciting story, John. Thank you for sharing it with us. I thank you for sharing your expertise on what's going on with artificial intelligence as well. I think that is, yeah, like I said, paradigm shift that's coming for our industry that I'm personally very, very excited about. Obviously, investors can find you at AUOZ on the Canadian Securities Exchange, and we are looking forward to having you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.